Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Carlos Phillips, President and CEO of the Greenville Chamber. We host these community matters discussions every week to connect you with local, state, and national leaders. You can find past recordings as well as the upcoming Community Matters schedule at greenvillechamber.org. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees should be on mute with your cameras turned off. Also, please submit questions through the chat feature. We have a lot to talk about today, but if there's time at the end, we do want this to be an interactive discussion. Now on with the program. Today we're joined by Mayor Knox White for an update on the city of Greenville. Good afternoon, Mayor.
Hey, Carlos, good to join you.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're honored to have you here with us today on Community Matters. We've got a lot to discuss today, so let's jump right in. Let's discuss one of the elephants in the room, Mayor. Can you give us a high-level overview of how COVID-19 has impacted the city?
Well, it's been a crazy time for everyone, not just in Greenville, but of course across the country and the world. A lot of similarities in how cities have handled it. I've been very proud of my city council and the actions we've taken, really going all the way back to March. This was uncharted territory for everyone, but people really came together in terms of our elected officials of the city and in terms of restaurants and retailers and others. I mean, with all the hardship back in March, with the close downs and such, behind the scenes, it was an amazing amount of people stepping up and saying, hey, we want to do what we need to do, whatever that is. And people kind of rose to the occasion. Coming up more to today's era, if you will, in this terrible epidemic, the whole issue of masks, I think we were the first city in South Carolina to require masks at all. And it was fairly limited. We were just looking at grocery stores and pharmacies in particular at that time. And that was because we had a lot of people emailing and contacting us who were concerned that they could not go and feel safe in a grocery store and a pharmacy, essential services, if you will. So we felt like it was appropriate and limited, frankly, to require masks in those locations. Looking back, though, I think what happened next is also extremely important, because what happened next was other cities began to pick up on that. And very importantly, on the private sector side, that's when Publix, grocery store later, and CVS and Walgreens and others, Target and Home Depot, several weeks later, after we passed our ordinance, they came on board, and that made a huge difference as well. We also, of course, required masks in restaurants and such. And Carlos, you remember in the March and April time period, we rolled out this thing called the Greenville Pledge, a cooperative effort with the chamber and the county. And that was an early effort to realize that it's not a matter of whether something's open or closed or whatever. It's a matter of what the confidence level of people will be, even if you do reopen. Will people actually re-enter a restaurant, re-enter a retail store? So we came up with this Greenville Pledge idea, which was a voluntary program asking businesses and restaurants to sign a pledge to follow the protocol. We listed all the protocol. Your employees had to wear a mask. You kept the place clean, lots of other things. And people did step up. I think we had great success in the early weeks of that, people signing up and posting the Greenville Pledge. And this too was an idea that was later copied by other cities in South Carolina. But what we noticed was after 3 or 4 weeks, well, I'll give you an example. I'd go to a restaurant and they had the Greenville Pledge on the door. The employees were wearing masks and things were kind of careful. But then a few weeks later, I'd go back to that same restaurant and not all the employees were wearing masks. People began to get a little lax. And of course, we had the bigger issue of everybody getting, all of us getting too carefree and lax when things began to reopen. So it was because of that, we felt like we had to at least impose that new requirement. But anyway, long and short, it's been quite a time. And of course, it's impacted our budget, and we can talk about some of that too. Yeah.
And Mayor, masking is still important. Our COVID related, the new cases, we're trending in the right direction right now. We're trending downward, but it's still important for us to be diligent in wearing our mask and social distancing. You agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe people missed this story, but actually was picked up by the national media that in South Carolina, the cities that had mask ordinances, and they listed Greenville, Columbia, Charleston, had a decline and have had for several weeks a marked decline in spread of the virus. And that's a fact. And it was picked up by nationals, and certainly here working with Prisma and Bon Secours, we saw that trend too. And in those cities in South Carolina that do not have a mask ordinance, in those areas, there has not been the same kind of decline. So they see a correlation. And I'll say this too, our friends at Prisma and Bon Secours have been saying the same thing. Time moves so quickly, and this whole thing has gone through so many different time periods of different things happening. But the real crisis point in our community was just after 4th of July. You had Memorial Day. I mean, you had your Memorial Day and the 4th of July. And that's when we held a news conference with Prisma and Bon Secours. We've done everything we can to get the professionals, not the politicians, not the elected officials, to get the medical professionals in front of the press, in front of the people, to answer questions and give the information. And we had a good press conference, I guess about 4 or 5 weeks ago, to talk about the mask. And at that time, it was explained with a nice chart that after Memorial Day and after 4th of July, that instead of just going up, it was literally going like this. It was a moment of crises. I mean, they quantified it in terms of the bed spaces taken up and what the trend was. And that was a real plea to wear a mask. It was soon thereafter that Home Depot and Publix and other companies joined the board. So they think that was a turning point when about the time Greenville did mask and the private sector started acquiring a mask, that instead of going up like this, it's began to come back down again. So that's an accomplishment, but it's still important. It will be for some time.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Mayor. Back to the budget. How's the budget holding up? I know at the chamber we have we've moved away from managing the budget to managing cash. I don't know if the city has that luxury or not, but how's the budget holding up?
Yeah, I think we got through this budget year very well, considering City of Greenville, unlike a lot of cities in South Carolina, we had no reductions in our public safety department. We had no significant reductions in our budget altogether. What we did do is hold back on some capital projects until we have a better sense of where things are going. I think next year's budget will be tougher when business licenses come in at a reduced number, and we're beginning to have kind of a fix on what that may be. But hospitality taxes, which fund so many things we all enjoy, by the way, not the essential services, but all the recreation and special projects we have in our community, that took a big hit. So instead of $12 million a year, about $12 million in hospitality taxes, we're looking at like $9 million. So things have had to be trimmed back, and tourism related projects. That's probably been the toughest one to deal with. But overall, considering your sidewalks, we still have a massive new sidewalk construction program. We have traffic calming. We have green space being increased. We have trails being created. A lot of the amenities we've been accustomed to, we've actually been able to continue to do that. And also $1 million or more for affordable housing programs, in addition to what was before. So we've kept on target on affordable housing, on transportation, on neighborhood services. All of that came through this year just fine.
Good. That's good to know. Good to know. Switching gears for just a moment, many communities around the country have been impacted by a second phenomenon, and that is events related to social and racial injustice. How has Greenville fared with those activities? What have you seen?
Yeah, once again, we were part of something that was national in scope. You don't have to look any further than Charleston or Columbia, or Greensboro, Charlotte, as well as around the country, to see that these various protest activities have been pretty high level for some time now. And of course, the big kickoff, George Floyd's death, was most significant. I'm proud to say that, at least as we sit here today, we've been able to engage people who are working these protests, and we have not had any broken windows. We haven't had spray painting of of a public property, anything like that. What we have had is a lot of activity and people protesting very vigorously, and sometimes it's inconvenient to those of us who want to go downtown and do other things. But I will tell you that behind the scenes, well, two things to know, because I do get asked a lot about this. Everyone in this country, you have a First Amendment right to engage in peaceful protest. And so when you read in the paper about there's a permitted event in the city downtown, it's not because we're allowing something. It's kind of a misnomer to say permitted. We have a process where anyone has a right to do it. In Greenville or any other city in this country, a right to protest, to march, and all that. We put on there a permitting process as a courtesy and to set some rules. We ask people voluntarily to file the permits, and that way we have some say in where the event takes place, how long it lasts, a lot of logistics and such. So people can do what they do, and we think it's been managed well. And I give most of the credit, getting back to the more serious matter of the really big event we had and other cities had. We had a lot of people in our community who engaged with the organizers and in behalf of maintaining the peace and making sure. And many of these community heroes, and that's what they are to me, heroes, who step forward to participate with an eye out toward keeping it peaceful, participating in the process, but keeping it peaceful, kind of leading the folks. They were around till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, making sure that ours closed out peacefully. And unfortunately, many of our sister cities had some pretty bad episodes of violence and damage. We did not have them, and our great police department and the way they managed it's important. But they would tell you too that the community engagement was that you never read about it, you never heard about it, and I'm just telling you we had it. People who said, "Hey, I'm going to participate and I'm going to make sure it's a peaceful event," and they were true to their word, and that's why Greenville, South Carolina, handled it so well. Good.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it just underscores the type of community that Greenville is, and probably also underscores why so many more people want to move to Greenville and to the area.
It should be a good reason, because our, whatever it is that people working together and communicating and engaging, because again, just to repeat myself a little bit, when these protests took place, we talked to the organizers. We didn't try to hide from them, and they didn't hide from us. And we said, here are the rules. If you're going to do this, exercise your First Amendment rights, you got to do it. We got to work together on this. And our police chief and the sheriff played a big role in that too. And for the most part, the rules were followed and the events were peaceful. And we certainly did not have the kind of things that happened in too many American cities.
Good. Well, I want to thank you for agreeing to serve on Greenville's Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission. Going to do some serious work around disparities in education, health, income, and justice. And I want to thank you for agreeing to be a part of that.
Yeah, just, drill down for a minute on the health side of it. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've been so energetic about building bike and walking path systems, Swamp River Trail, and then the extension on that. And sometimes people lose sight of why we do these things. It's not just a frivolity or something, a little extra amenity in Greenville. It brings in tourists. Yes, that's true. It does. It brings people who end up setting up businesses here, by the way, especially the Swamp River Trail. But the health element, maybe now we're going to take it all more seriously. We understand how important that is. We have a high amount of diabetes in this area, so much of the South. Getting people out, a chance to exercise is so important. So that's why we build sidewalks. That's why we build trails. It's a good investment, but the disparity is there, and we should all be extremely concerned about it. It really was laid bare by this whole COVID situation.
Agreed. Now let's switch gears for a minute. Let's talk economic development. And Greenville and the community has been a leader in economic development, and we're recognized throughout the country for our leadership in that area. But there are a lot of things going on from an economic development perspective here in Greenville that may have gotten lost in the pandemic. But I can look out my window right now and I can see great buildings being erected, a lot of progress being made. Please update us on some of the things that are going on from an economic development perspective.
Yeah, we do have a lot going on. At the same time, we're dealing with these sort of emergency situations and managing health crises and protest and everything else, we're still working, as we always do, on trying to build great quality of life in Greenville, South Carolina, and all that. This afternoon at lunch, I had a chance to tour the under construction Grand Bohemian Hotel, and it is a grand hotel, with Richard Kessler, the owner. Took me inside it and got a chance to see what's coming next. The hotel is expected to open, by the way, in August of next year, just to give you the latest information on that. But it's a beautiful project. When you go down to Falls Park, beware that what you see is not what you're going to see. What you're going to see at the end of the day is a lot of stone and wood, high quality materials. It's going to look like a lodge in Yellowstone Park or something. That lodge look. So that project is underway. The AC Hotel up the street is underway, and I believe the rooftop deck will be opening shortly. That'll be a new amenity, not the hotel so much, but the upstairs amenity will be open soon. And a lot going on. Unity Park, the city's single largest project, is well underway. That's our $40 million park along the Reedy River. It's a construction site for those who haven't been down there recently, or if you haven't been on the Swamp Rabbit Trail, you might have missed it. But it's a construction site with the Harper construction trailers out front and bulldozing. A lot of underground work going on, and soon they'll be ripping into the Reedy River, because the river right now is just a ditch built in 1935 or something like that. It's a man-made ditch. It's going to be taken back to what a river ought to look like, with a more gentle sloping terrain around it. And you'll start seeing the river work in 2020 and early 21. It'll start soon, and that will really get people's attention, by the way, in terms of changing the landscape. So the park is about 2 years away, but we're absolutely in the middle of that. Also, soon to be announced are some great developments in the affordable housing front. We're building Unity Park for a number of reasons. It's a great way to respond to growth. If you're growing really fast, you need to be attentive to green space and parks. That's our number one thing, I guess. But right along that is the opportunity at Unity Park to build affordable housing in West Greenville, where so much change is taking place. So we're working with that, and the Housing Trust Fund, which we set up a couple years ago with council support every year for more money for that, is going to be able to break ground soon on some new affordable housing. But we anticipate, to give you an update on this, we anticipate a plan to create about 390 units of affordable housing on the Washington Street side of Unity Park. And this will all take place in the next couple of years, but a lot of people working on that, and it's going to change that. So Unity Park is well underway, and the affordable housing will become much more conspicuous and real soon. And then we have other projects that we're going to talk about them. Carlos, you see them out the window, the Camper Down project, the things on Red Street, a lot of activity still, condos and apartments and all of that too.
Good. Thanks for that update, Mayor. And like I said, I can look out my window and I can see the Camper Down project. It is big. They're adding brick to it now and what have you. It's really starting to take shape. It's really looking good. The Grand Bohemian, I can see that. It's going to be one heck of a structure.
You can see the space where we hope to build in the next few years a new conference center in downtown Greenville, where it belongs. I mean, I always tell people, and the current convention center, which we inherited from the old Textile Hall Corporation, it's a very large facility, but it doesn't work real well for attracting shows these days with the technology and all. Unless you really love Krispy Kreme donuts, you're probably not going to choose that location. So we don't do as much as we should do in terms of inviting and recruiting conferences to Greenville. And I say that to the chamber audience because our aspiration should be to have a conference center that attracts people, organizations that are related to our economic development goals. So a real conference center in our downtown where it belongs, with the hotels and restaurants and all the wonderful amenities of downtown Greenville. People will want to come to Greenville. They will want to do that like people go to San Antonio. They want to come to Greenville. But we want, for example, all kinds of organizations that are perhaps related to automobile engineering, for example, just to give you one example. And we'll be coming the country to really focus on that. We want to bring those people, those entities to Greenville, because you know what happens when people come to downtown Greenville. They invariably, they start looking around and thinking, I might want to move here. I might want to move my company here. And that's our ulterior motive, if you will, for a conference center in downtown Greenville.
Good. I sure hope we can make that happen. It is much needed here, here in Greenville. So, Mayor, as you reflect on the past 5 months or so, what are some of your biggest takeaways from this experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have been trying to think. It's all been such a whirlwind, I think, for all of us, but certainly from terms of our community and the city. My biggest one is, we worked really well with, I was really proud of our medical community, the folks at Prisma, the folks at Bon Secours. They really stepped up in great stress, and we tried to play a role in helping provide a platform for them to get their message out. We think the facts are the most important thing, so that people learn more about not just what's happening in New York or in Texas or around the country, around the world. We want to hear what's happening in Greenville in terms of COVID. And we tried to do that with the hospital system, but those folks, everybody involved has worked so hard. But mainly it's a story of people coming together. And I want to say a shout out to the retailers and restaurants in particular. They had the most to lose, if you will, but the restaurant folks in particular have been incredible about, we got to do this right. People are not going to come back to the restaurant unless they feel safe. So they were at the forefront of, our employees need to wear a mask, and then later everyone needs to wear a mask when they come in. And I really appreciate that. Did we lose you for a minute, Carlos?
Nope, I'm back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just, people coming together, I think that's hugely important. But I tell you, you and I were talking the other day about, let's face it, a lot of people are leaving cities in the Northeast in particular. We know that it's happening. Now, we're already seeing it here in Greenville. We're already seeing some people, and we're already hearing some whispers, if you will, about companies, but it's just a trickle. But I think, it's probably true that Raleigh and Nashville and some of the cities that have just been emerging are probably going to get a lion's share of that. But this is an incredible opportunity for Greenville to be a place with high quality of life, a place that actually functions and works the way it should, a place that's beautiful. We should be very attractive to companies, and we need to be very strategic about how we go about this. But we need to be out there ready to receive people. And the best advantage we always have is we can just find a way, Carlos, to get them here. I hope Chris Stone's listening to us, because sometimes people come as visitors, or they come in town because they're riding, they're cycling with George Hincapie. I mean, the list goes on. Once people come here, for whatever reason, it puts the seed in their head. And we have a lot of success in the community, but we do need, we need regional headquarters. We still need to focus on those important things. We have a good startup community. We need to emphasize that too. And so anyway, there's opportunity out of all this nightmare. There's opportunity for Greenville, South Carolina.
Agreed, Mayor. I want to remind our attendees to submit questions to the chat. I'm sure you have some. And we'd love for the mayor to answer those. So please take a moment to submit your questions to the chat. Before we turn it over to Q&A, Mayor, we have a tradition here on Community Matters where we leave our attendees with a message of hope. The past 5 months have not been easy for our community. I remember my world changed on March the 17th. Well, actually, it was March the 11th when it changed. We closed our office on March the 17th. And life hasn't been the same since then. But I've always felt, and I've always tried to share, that we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together, and we're going to come out better on the other side of this pandemic. If you had a message of hope, what would it be? What would you share?
Well, I haven't, like most people, I haven't had a chance to travel like I would like, but I have received people and delegations from all over the country in the past few weeks. I had a group in from Miami last week. I had 2 groups in from Miami last week. Had several people from Charleston here, had
Did we quarantine the folks from Miami
Yeah,
for a
no,
couple of days?
they enjoyed the swamp. They loved, you know what, but here's my whole thing. What they all had in common was they said, oh my gosh, this city looks great. The vibrancy on the street, the faces of people walking around, the numbers of people out. They were amazed. You know, people always see this, but maybe you see it even more now when you come from some other place where unfortunately things are closed down and locked down and attitudes are poor and people are almost desperate and negative about things. They come here and they do see a glimmer of hope and optimism and just a beautiful place. And it's been reaffirmed to me in the last couple of weeks with the comments I've received from people who describe things are not so good back home, but man, now of course I'm looking at our city and thinking things are still depressed in terms of the numbers of people and that, but it's all relative. It's all relative. And I think we're going to be in an incredible place to welcome new talent, new people, young people, retired people, even more than we were pre-COVID.
I agree, Mayor. Here's a question from the chat. As you see other cities wrestle with forces that threaten and tear them apart, how do you see Greenville avoiding similar experiences? In other words, how is Greenville going to emerge stronger and maintain cohesion?
I think we have a powerful lesson in how we've managed ourselves to this date, and that's been engagement, conversation, meeting people, talking to people. Maybe because we're a smaller community, we can reach out and do that. I don't doubt that it's a lot more difficult in a bigger area, but we do that here, and we have to continue to do that. Hopefully we've all learned something. I feel like I have, in terms of making sure we don't leave anyone out and making sure our city, our new park, Unity Park, was on this theme, if you will, previous to COVID, that we were trying to create a park for everyone. And we said that over and over again, with affordable housing, with attention to the surrounding neighborhood. And that's just got to be our theme. I mean, the cities that will be successful in the future will be cities that are perceived as being welcoming and inclusive. That is not rhetoric. That is not some political statement. It is just reality. And that's, if you want the talented people, you can't be closing doors. And so I think, you know, what I've thought about is just how do you convey that? And you do it in 100 different ways. It's people having conversations and all that and feeling welcome and joining organizations, part of the community. But you also do it. What I heard from these people in Miami, you do it by people come here and just see with their eyes the beauty of Falls Park and the diversity of people and in the park. They couldn't get over that on the weekends. Everybody's there. It's like, how's this happen? If we can keep playing on that, that's our strong card and it's the right thing to do.
Agreed. I've often heard that Greenville is large enough to scale, yet still small enough to get things done. And I say I'm impressed every day with our ability to continue to get things done, to work together to get things done. And I think the future success of our city will depend on our ability to continue to do that. So many folks on today's Community Matters have heard about the 40% population growth projection for Greenville County. Can you spend a couple of minutes talking about how that may impact the core, the city of Greenville?
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of in the last few years is we reversed what was a decline in population in the city. The county was growing for the past 40 years, but the city of Greenville actually, truth be told, had decline in population census after census after census until recently. And you can see the evidence of that everywhere. So we're getting a larger slice, if you will, of the county's population growth. And thank you very much. We're getting more of the traffic and all that from the county. So, but yeah, if our projections, Carlos, if Chamber and others were talking about a 40% growth, you say 40%, what'd you say growth?
40% over the next 20 years.
Well, add to that several more percentages, because I mean, after COVID, I'm convinced we're going to see faster growth. So for good and bad, we better watch out. So I know in the city, we'll continue doing what we're doing. We're going to continue to be really mindful of managing our growth and worrying a lot about it. We don't get everything right, but we do worry about it and talk about it and think about it. We got to maintain good quality of life here at the same time. So, so watch that. I think that number may be conservative.
Well, I think we're the envy of a lot of communities. A 40% population growth is it's hard to beat that. So that speaks a lot about the community, and I can't think of any community that would not welcome that. So
well, you better be prepared on matters of affordable housing, and addressing that, not putting your head in the sand, but realizing, yes, you've got to provide housing opportunities for all different levels. You have to work on that. You just can't think it's going to happen magically. And then public transportation, you've got to have a transportation system, infrastructure that can manage those populations. And I mean, I love Austin, Texas, and I love Nashville, Tennessee, and everybody's going there. But those are two hyper growth communities. The first thing they would tell you is we did not prepare our road systems, our highway systems, our sidewalks, our public transportation either for the growth that's coming. So we need to do better. Again, I think we're trying to do that now, but it's a larger matter than the city. It's a county thing too. And, but we are going to fix Woodruff Road. And I want to give Butch Curvin and the county council and the tax committee all the credit for that. But, Woodruff Road, who would have believed it? I mean, with the help of the state, we're going to have a parallel road. The city's already built the parallel road to Woodruff Road in the city, and it's worked absolutely beautifully to help you get around the traffic to where you want to go. And now the new plan is to go all the way up Woodruff Road. So, hey, I'm telling you, if we can fix Woodruff Road in the next couple of years, and we will, then we can manage our growth in a way no other county or city has.
Mayor, you may have just excited the attendees on this call by stating continued improvements to Woodruff Road. It is an area that oftentimes, me personally, I've avoided like the plague.
Yeah, me too. Me too. If people, I'm going to confess to everybody here who's watching, I'm a city guy, and when you say things like Five Forks, and I'm saying that right, I don't even know where that is. I don't even know where that is. Where is that? It's out down Woodruff or something. I don't go down there. But, seriously, it's a microcosm of bad planning, how not to do things. All the experts will tell you that. And now it's being retrofitted. The county is doing some great things to fix that. And in the city, we've already done our part, and I can tell you it works. So we do that. But you got to manage the growth. And I want to quickly add to the other thing I would say, that's why we're building Unity Park. To go back to that, we're adding green space and new park space. The Swamp Rivet Trail is going to be extended. All these are the kind of things, if you want to manage growth, that's how you do it. You build green space, you build parks and trails. You think about things like, you don't just widen a road, you think about things like a parallel road. That's a lot smarter than widening and widening and widening. If you don't believe it, go to Atlanta, where they thought they could widen roads and solve all their problems.
Yeah. Mayor, has any thought been given to restricting access to Main Street or on Main Street?
I saw that question in there. We have, with a lot of thought and attention, we created a pedestrian-focused downtown, extra wide sidewalks, 2-lane road. It works really well. I don't think you mess with something that works really well. And besides that, the retailers and the restaurants would go absolutely crazy. And in fact, every time we do close it, they kind of do that. We do close Main Street from time to time. We close blocks of it for special events. I do see us closing perhaps some side streets like we did at where One Plaza is today. But I think there's something about that traffic circulation. I can't explain why, but I can take anyone who doesn't believe me, just come with me on a Friday night when we do close it, and you watch what happens. It just kind of sucks the energy out of the street. So the focus is on pedestrian. That's what it's about. It's not about whether a road is closed or not. It's, can the pedestrians walk freely and feel like they're in charge? And we have that now.
Good. I don't know how much you can talk about this, Mayor, but when we were referencing some of the major and significant economic development projects that are taking place, we didn't mention County Square, which is $1 billion project that has excited many folks in the community. What's the status of that? How's that moving along?
Well, I wouldn't be the expert on it, but certainly the county is proceeding with the county office building, which is going to be a beautiful, really iconic building. Greenville City Hall is not iconic and not beautiful. We're going to do something about that. But it's
when are you going to do something about that, Mayor?
The new city manager really wants to do something about that. This is an inoperable building, by the way. HVAC is terrible and doesn't work well. We could use actually smaller space, not a bigger space. But that's proceeding. And then I think it's fair to say that the private developers, Roca Point, of course, they're dealing with the post-COVID world, and some of their ideas of movie theaters and things like that probably going to be changed, I'm sure. The whole retail mix may be changed. I think you'll see a lot of, early on, I think you will see apartments and housing and such. City standpoint, we felt like in two things we were able to have them adopt our downtown design guidelines. And I can tell you, if you want to know why downtown looks so good, it's because we have rules and guidelines, and they work. It all plays on human psychology, and these are things architects understand, and we're going to apply those same rules to County Square development in the future. More green space and trails through there, and we also have committed $5 million to affordable housing in the neighborhood adjacent to, and hope perhaps even on the site itself. So at the end of the day, I think it'll be a well-managed project, but no doubt it's going to be, reconfigured and rethought after COVID.
Good. As we wrap up today's Community Matters, don't want to leave without echoing a sentiment that attendees shared in the chat, and it reads, "A commendation to the mayor and so many community leaders for letting science, rationality, and innovation lead us through this challenge and into a new future." Mayor, you've been at this job for quite some time, and which is pretty amazing, because oftentimes in these political positions, you don't last too long in these roles. So what's your secret? How have you been able to continue to thrive and excel as mayor for over 20 years now?
Yeah, well, I can't be the one to answer that too well, but I do try to listen. And I kind of found a city many years ago that I didn't think did a good job of listening. I didn't have structures in place to make sure neighborhoods were heard. Now we have these things in place, and boy, people are heard. Boy, they heard. But I'm always really serious about that. It's kind of a touchstone, is that people got to feel like that City Hall is not some distant object. It's something they feel a kinship with, and that we have an agenda that speaks to their needs. And so, but things change. You have to understand that we're in a new place. And so the things we were talking about 15 years ago are different from what we're talking about now. Now we're talking about managing growth, about affordable housing, transportation, green space in a way that we didn't 15 years ago. So I try to keep it current. And then personally, I just love this job, and I love Greenville, and it's just a community where people actually work together. Isn't that something? We actually work together, and that's in the culture. I didn't create that. I didn't cause it. It's just out there. I get to take advantage of it. And so I appreciate working with the chamber, with all kinds of people of all different ages. And I think that's why I'm still here.
Well, kudos on the great job that you've done, on the leadership that you've showed. And thanks for building a community that my family and I wanted to move to, and will not be leaving. We're here, we're Greenville lifers. So thank you for helping to create such a community. Any closing?
Good to know and a relief, Carlos. Okay.
Any closing thoughts for our Community Matters participants today, Mayor White?
Well, I just want to recognize that people have different views on these things. I tell you what, I wish everybody could see my emails and letters. It totally broke my system of responding to emails and things during all of this last several months. But I was always struck too by diversity of opinion in the city. Certainly I heard from people in the county as well, by the way. And, I get somebody who felt strongly about that we must all wear masks, even before the city kind of got on board on that. And then within 10 seconds, I had an email from someone who thinks the masks don't work and it's all a conspiracy and it's terrible. And I'll tell you this, so sometimes I look at the two emails, they came in 10 seconds apart, and my goodness, they live like 2 blocks away from each other. And I thought, well, these people ought to get together and talk it out because their worldviews were so completely different. So we had to kind of work within that, as the governor did on the statewide level. I can only imagine on the state level. But people in the city, by and large, in a serious note, I have to say, businesses, retailers, restaurants, the regular citizens overwhelmingly did what we wish people across the country had done. They really came together and said, whatever it takes, we want to get back to normal. We want to get back to life. And maybe too, there's an appreciation for all the great things we have here in Greenville, South Carolina. We had a great park and trails and green spaces to enjoy during COVID. Some cities did not have that. We did. And so you can appreciate the things that are important to you, your family, your friends, and hopefully your community and city too.
Well, Mayor, thank you for joining us today. We are appreciative of the information that you shared, and again, for the leadership that your leadership for this community. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you
for that. I also want to thank our attendees for joining us today. We had a great crowd, and I hope you enjoyed today's Community Matters. Today's recording will be shared on the Greenville Chamber's website and sent to attendees along with a survey. So please complete the survey. It does inform our programming. So thanks in advance for completing that survey. Don't forget that this is part of an ongoing series. Next week, we will speak with John Lummis and Mark Ferris for a discussion on the future of economic development. We take time at the end of every call to remind everyone, please do your part in helping stop the spread of coronavirus. Remember, mask, wash, and distance. Just practice those 3 things, and our economic recovery will be healthy and robust. Let's all do our part to care for our neighbors. Everybody have a great day. Stay positive and test negative.